and welcome to Where Are They Now? I'm your host, Heather Lindstedt from the class of 1985, and today I welcome Beth Pariseau from the class of 1998. Beth, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So it's been a long time, as we kind of talked about, and not as long as me from leaving Chelmsford High, but tell me about a little bit about your experience in your freshman year as you went into the high school situation.
Well, we'd already, at the time, there was only one middle school. So we'd all kind of integrated all the elementary schools into the middle school. So things were pretty set going to high school. And I consider myself very fortunate, to have had an excellent education in a public school, public high school. I thought the teachers that I had were some of the best. I did go to college too, but some of the teachers that I remember the most, some of the classroom experiences I remember most, and the activities I remember most were in high school. So yeah, I think I was really lucky. I went to school with a really talented class of kids. At the time, in terms of things like SAT scores and all that, grades and everything, it was one of the top high schools in the state. And, yeah, I think it was a really special, unusual experience, I think.
Was there any added pressure with a parent being a teacher in the school system or anything?
Well, because my dad left the Chelmsford school system in '88 while I was still in elementary school, so we were never in the school at the same time. That might have been weird, but otherwise, every teacher I'd had since kindergarten knew who I was and knew who he was, so that was nothing new in high school either.
Yeah, so there was no. The school, though, in general, always fun, and you just brought up being able to join clubs and activities and do those kind of things. So, but your area really went into the music.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And how did that happen? Was it from class with like somebody like Carl Rondina, or how did that all happen?
So I'd been doing music since elementary school too. I started playing the violin at about 7 years old, and I was singing since I had a voice, really, since I was a little kid. And then toward the end of middle school, I started taking voice lessons. And I had gone to Europe with the high school orchestra when I was in 8th grade because they had to pad out the violin section. So I got to have that experience. So I came into high school with a real passion for music and theater. So I just kind of continued with those groups. Carl Rondina was among the teachers I was just, kind of referring to, who was a really big influence throughout high school and that I remember really fondly. My home at Chelmsford High was his chorus room 218. That's where all my friends and I would hang out between classes. Sometimes we'd have lunch there. And I took a free period study hall I would go in there, and we'd be there after school for rehearsals and or over at McCarthy at the time for musical rehearsals. So yeah, he was a very big figure in our lives. And so was that just general area of the school, the band room, the chorus room. That was where we all lived.
And Chelmsford High, it allows you to kind of live your dreams or try different things, find your passion. But other than, within the music, did you ever think like, oh, I can do something, like my future could be in music?
Yes, I entered UMass as a vocal performance major in the music department, and I did have to audition for that. So, I did think I was legit, but I was disabused of that notion at the college level. And I think I had mistaken my avocation, which I loved and was passionate about, for my vocation. But it was only once I got to college and stopped having to take English classes that it was like a fish doesn't know what water is, right? And I didn't realize how important writing was to me until I wasn't doing that and I was doing music instead. But I also, I had some issues, especially as a vocal performer. You have to have a really excellent ear for music. And it was sort of, I say it was sort of like getting to the minor leagues and finding out you can't hit a curveball. at that level. You know, it was like I was good enough to like get into that level and maybe, you know, had experiences at a higher level than most people, but within that, you know, 1% of 1%, it is a lot like athletes. You know, I wasn't going to be in the big leagues.
So speaking of that, though, go back to the writing and the English. Was there an influence at Chelmsford too in that department too that was probably pushing you in that direction, or?
No, I mean, English was always my favorite class, my best subject. I wound up becoming an English literature major in college after a semester freshman year in music. But the two names that come to mind for me first, I had a number of really great English teachers there, but the first one would be Barry Hazard, who sadly left teaching shortly after I graduated, and also Bob Lemire. He was in the history department, but you know, what was great about him and Mr. Hazard was that they taught us how to learn. They didn't just teach us facts and the topics that, you know, the books that we were reading or the history we were studying. Mr. Lemire actually had a whole lecture devoted to how to take notes, which a lot of people don't get. And that has been, I mean, I'm a journalist now and I take notes at my day job and I still use some of the techniques that he taught me. And I remember Mr. Hazard had his writing absolutes, you know, it was for academic writing. So the writing I do now is a little bit different, but you know, some of those were just really foundational, formative things that not every kid gets in school. And so, yeah, the thing that was the best about those teachers, aside from the fact that they were demanding, but also because they had high expectations of us, they also took the time to tell us overtly, here's how you learn. And that prepared me for everything in my life better than you know, knowing, you know, the date of the Battle of Waterloo, you know, ever could have. And, you know, Mr. Hazard was a personal influence on me. He helped me enter some creative writing work in a contest that I didn't win, but it was a vote of confidence. I'll never forget, I took a creative writing elective with him my senior year, and I think I still have the paper where he wrote, "You can be something in the world of writing." So that was huge. And I ended up actually going to UMass with his daughter, so I still saw, and I've actually seen him recently as well. We met up for coffee in Georgetown where he lives a few years ago, pre-pandemic. So yeah, and I sent him Christmas cards, like I've sent him letters. I've sent him some of my more recent writing. And then Mr. Lemire, I'm friends with on Facebook. And of course, hear about his son Jonathan's exploits in journalism. And, you know, I still have the book about Mary Tudor that he gave me with the History Department Award. And he, yeah, he's still, you know, somebody that I'll sort of see online. And, you know, he was an all-time great lecturer. You know, his ability to deliver material both thoroughly and factually, but compellingly. One of the best teachers I've ever had anywhere at any level.
Now, speaking of that, you've done some traveling too.
Yeah.
And is that because of the love for writing, seeing things, history, those kind of things, or?
That started with those high school orchestra trips,
Yeah.
which, again, another thing that is so fortunate that I got to experience. The Hanson brothers, Ken and Dick Hanson, Dick and Chelmsford, Ken and Belmont, and Betty Hanson, Dick's wife, who was my chorus teacher in middle school, they were also huge, you know, influences on me personally. And, you know, one of the sort of village, you know, that raised me in Chelmsford. And the fact that they put together these European tours for high school kids. And, you know, the first trip we went all around the Alsace-Lorraine area of Germany and France. And, you know, places basically straight out of The Sound of Music in Austria, and, you know, played the second trip I went on in my sophomore year of high school, we played in a church in Vienna where Mozart had been the organist. I mean, how many high school kids can say that? That's incredible. And the band also took trips. I remember my sister went with the band to Paris. So just having these opportunities, we had a chance to even have a short little stay with a host family in this little town in Austria where we were playing a concert. And that was incredible. I mean, again, how many 16-year-olds get to do that? Get to learn how to ask, mom who doesn't speak any English, can I have some more orange juice? Or, it was just incredible. And we would do some, historic tours and things like that. And yeah, I mean, that really, I don't think I ever set out like I want to travel, but opportunities presented themselves, usually having to do with whatever I was doing in school. There was that. There was Oxford when I was in college. And then since then for my job, it's mostly been lower 48 travel for my job, but I travel pretty often for work, covering tech conferences. And then I've also just been really fortunate to have the opportunity I have some friends who, one of them works for the State Department. And so they were in Brussels in 2015. And then I have another friend that I actually met because of baseball on the internet. I know this sounds weird, but, and he actually came here to see Red Sox games. And at one point my parents let him stay with them. So he returned the favor that same trip, that same year in 2015 when I went to Paris and helped me find this amazing Airbnb and, had a whole itinerary. He speaks the language, he knows the metro, and we went to all the sites and everything. He was like my private tour guide. So it mostly had to do with just other interests of mine that took me to different places.
Yeah. So UMass, was that an easy selection though for what you wanted to do coming out of Chelmsford, going out there, or?
No. UMass did not have an awesome reputation at the time in the 90s. And, there was, I think, a lot of emphasis on big name schools. And a lot of the kids, like I said, I went to high school with a really talented, supremely intelligent, gifted set of kids. And a lot of them around me on the class ranking list were going to Ivy League. And so, UMass was sort of, it just didn't have the best reputation. But it ultimately was the right choice because I still was able to have opportunities like Oxford.
Right.
I still was able to have experiences like playing in the university orchestra and singing in university choral groups and writing for New England's largest college daily newspaper, which is how I got into the career I'm still in. But initially, the decision to go there was kind of hard.
And difficult because it's so big compared to when you're leaving Chelmsford.
Yeah, I mean, like I already said, I didn't walk into a classroom where the teacher didn't know my family from kindergarten on, and then all of a sudden I'm on this campus with 20,000 people, and in lecture halls the size of movie theaters, and but music helped me find a little niche within that, a little close-knit kind of group of maybe like 300 or so kids, which is more the size of CHS, that were all extremely hard workers, extremely passionate, extremely dedicated to what they were there to study. A lot of them were the same kids. I could list off the kids that I was in the music department with at UMass that also went to Chelmsford. So, because at the time the joke was that it was Chelmsford High West. I think Chelmsford was one of the top, sources of students for UMass Amherst at the time. And so there was a lot of familiar faces anyway. But also the music department, even after I left that major, was still the basis for my social experiences, and was still kind of a home that I found within that much wider world of UMass.
Now, if you had left UMass, though, and gone to an Ivy League, you know, you would have had to battle some of those people that, you know, are like Yankee fans. So, I mean, one of the keys to staying at, like, somewhere like UMass, you know, you have more Red Sox fans. And clearly that's one of your passions. And you
big
even,
time.
and you even got to write.
Yeah, I get to write a little bit about the Red Sox and get paid for it, which was pretty awesome. I also wrote about it for free for a while on my blog, back when blogging was a thing. That's, you know, I did not come to fanatical Red Sox fandom until after college. I think I missed that belonging. I think everybody, when they leave school in their early 20s, they're sort of lost. And like, I had all these sort of built-in social groups and common interests when I was all the way through school. And then all of a sudden it's like, you know, who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? And this was also right around when the Patriots started too. I think I remember, I mean, I grew up with football on in the house all the time, obviously, right? And it behooved me to know the difference between 1st and 10 and 4th and goal, so I wouldn't know when I could walk in front of the TV without getting yelled at, right? And, you know, I attended football games that my dad coached and everything like that. But I was really more there for the marching band, you know, through high school and college, because UMass actually has an incredible marching band. But, you know, right around that time, 2002, 2003, was when the Patriots' first dynasty era started, and I remember the snowball, and I remember everybody talking about it. At that time, I was still working part-time as an editorial assistant at the Globe, which also meant that, you know, I could hear Bob Bryan shouting down the hallway, you know, when he would record for TV shows, and, you know, it was just, that was the atmosphere, and that was sort of helped me find a home in a wider world again after school. And also, it just happened to be when the Patriots and the Red Sox started doing unprecedented things. And by 2003, I was hooked on both. And so that Game 7 of the 2003 ALCS just hit me like a ton of bricks. But I was just like hopelessly hooked and hanging on every pitch between like 2003 and 2009 or 10. We were going to a ton of Patriots games, ton of Red Sox games. I was basically working 2 jobs in a way, because I was doing I got my job in tech journalism in 2005. And between then and like 2011, 2012, I would do that all day. And then I would come home and I would watch the Red Sox game and write about it. Like it was a part-time gig on top of, and I never got paid commensurate with that, but there were some perks. And in between there, just out of college, I did some work for a while as a stringer for the Little Sun. And one of the things I got to do for that job was cover Game 7 of the 2004 ALCS at different bars in Lowell. So that was awesome. That was so cool to get to, you know, go and experience that and meet a bunch of really cool Red Sox fans, like a couple in matching Carlton Fisk jerseys at the Catcher's Mitt, which is a now defunct sports bar, you know, who were talking about, you know, 86 and 75 and, you know, getting to, you know, have that experience and write about it, which is sort of my MO in general. And then, yeah, I mean, I've gotten to meet people like my friend Ian that I talked about that I ended up going to visit in Paris, and he came here. He and I were both at the Mother's Day Miracle because he was visiting at that point. And, you know, and and it also like really was something that I could do with my dad. Yeah. And we've had some amazing times as, you know, buddies at the game, Patriots games especially. You know, back when like Gil Santos's voice is in the parking lot and the tailgate, you know, and it's freezing. We went to the coldest game in Gillette Stadium history against the Titans in 2004, and I'll never forget that. You know.
But meeting Big Papi, is that like a highlight?
I brag on that. That is like, that's like my claim to fame. Like I will tell anybody who will listen that I hugged him. I didn't just meet him, I hugged him. That was Fan Appreciation Day in 2009. That also was actually a Chelmsford connection because Sean McAdam, who's a Chelmsford alum, ran into my dad. And Ian and I were going to a game then, I think, because he was visiting again. And we were at the baseball tavern or something before the game, and my dad got in touch and was like, hey, Sean McAdams says they're doing the fan appreciation thing on the field. And it was one of those things that Sox have such a following that they like, it was like word of mouth, like knowing about it. They didn't like really announce it. And there's still thousands of people there. So we go in, and I think it's something they do every year, or at the time they did every year. It was the last home weekend of the schedule, and we all were on the warning track. So I'm in the warning track right in front of the monster, and the players kind of came around. There was, a little rope or whatever, and some of them just sort of waved, some of them high-fived people and walked by. Some stopped, shook hands, took pictures and stuff like that. And it took Poppy 5 times as long as any other player to get around the field, because people are handing him their children, like, like he's the Pope, and I saw
And
other.
he's not, but okay.
Well, I mean, but people love him like family. He's a different story. And and I know that some of the players can be a little bit prickly about adults versus kids, like asking for autographs or picture or whatever. But I saw other grown people getting hugs from him. So when he came to me, I said, can I have a hug? And he just gave me a hug, and that was it. He didn't say anything, but it was unbelievable. It was like, I mean, you hear all the time celebrities being, smaller or shorter in real life or whatever. I mean, he's legitimately enormous, not just height-wise, but like width. And it was sort of like hugging an armoire or like a big like piece of oak furniture. Like I could barely get my arms around him. It was amazing.
So by the way, yes, I'm old, so I was at the World Series in '86.
Oh my God.
And nobody beats the can, but yes, Oil Can Boy did get beat that day.
Yeah.
But have you ever worked on, and I know nothing, I always say this, I'm more sports and always idolize people that are into the arts. Have you ever thought about taking your writing skills with your music skills and ever combining them? Would you ever write a song or those kind of things?
No.
Did that ever?
I don't have that talent. I really don't. I was good at performing things other people wrote and appreciating them, but I do not have any songwriting or music writing talent. I have combined writing with images, because these days I'm actually a big shutterbug and pretty into photography. So I've combined words and images, but not so much the music with the words myself.
It just seems like those two kind of do merge, though, in some ways.
It's interesting, yeah. For me, they merge as a skill set.
Okay.
Music taught me work ethic. I remember being at UMass, and the Fine Arts Center, where the practice rooms were, was underground. I'm not even going to go down that road, but there were no windows in the practice rooms, and that's where kids would live, literally 24/7. And I remember there was one time I was down there for class or whatever, and somebody came out of a practice room and sincerely asked another person they saw in the hallway what day it was. Music, the work ethic is beyond anything I experienced anywhere else in my education. And as with journalism, it's a performative career. So it doesn't matter how good your last performance was. It matters that you did it again this time. It doesn't matter if you get it right in practice. It matters that you get it right at the time you're supposed to get it right. So that kind of work ethic, attention to detail, preparation, that all prepared me really well for not just journalism, but technology journalism, where attention to detail is really important. And you're only as good as your last story, So there are ways that I guess might not be obvious that music still informs what I'm doing, even if I'm not actually doing music at the same time.
So how did you get into the tech thing?
Well, like so many people, by accident. When I graduated in 2002, I totally thought I was going to be a GA reporter for the Boston Globe. I was going to be a foreign correspondent for the New York Times, Unfortunately, that was right about when the print newspaper industry died. And it was, at the time, it was the worst job market since the Great Depression. And I did interviews at newspapers where they were like, to be honest with you, we're turning away people with 15 years of experience. So you're kind of, So what I did was I went and got a desk job and I was a stringer for the Little Sun, and put some clips together. And eventually I typed the word writer into monster.com just to date myself, and a news writer position at this company in Newton called Tech Target popped up, and I went for an interview, and they liked the fact that I had journalism experience and figured I could pick up the tech. It's harder to teach the journalism skills, and it's a really experiential job. You have to learn while you go. It's hard to learn journalism academically, but tech, they figured I could pick that up enough. And I would call myself computer literate, but I didn't really have any formal training or anything like that. But, I'm a big nerd from way back. And I had these great teachers that taught me how to learn at a young age. And I was also able to bring those skills and memories and their high expectations and, not suffering any fools, and the sense of discipline that I'd learned during my education, and was able to connect with people in the industry who very patiently started teaching me. And also what I started writing about was data storage, which was pretty easy to think about from a layperson's perspective, because at the time it was just disk drives like there are in your computer. It was pretty easy to, grasp the concept. And from there, I started just, covering different topics to the point where now I'm way far afield from storage. But I was fortunate to start with something that was pretty concrete to learn. And it's been great. It's been great because, when I was at the Globe, there were a couple times that I had to do stories like where we went to like a hostage standoff in Stoughton, and a neighbor who was angry that media was there shoved me and the photographer into oncoming traffic because he was mad that we were like rubbernecking or whatever. Yeah. And those kind of almost like ambulance chasing stories never sat well with me. I had a really hard time with that kind of thing. And the cool thing about tech is that I'm never talking to somebody who is like standing in front of their burning home in the middle of the night or something. It's like they're in a public role when I talk to them. They have an expectation that they're on record. And, again, fortunately for me, the tech world has become a lot less esoteric. It's mainstream now in most people's lives. It's how most businesses run. And so gradually it started to become more of a mainstream topic to write about, and I have been able to kind of write about things on a more human level, like about, remote work during the pandemic or cybersecurity, or, last year there was the biggest global IT outage ever. A company called CrowdStrike, their software glitched, and it froze a lot of computers that were used by companies all over the world, including airlines. So I don't know if you remember last July, there was a week or so, especially a weekend, where there were just people stuck at airports. And right. So these things have a very tangible impact on people's lives now. And so I'm still writing for a technical audience, but there's more human interest to it. So.
Well, I'll tell you, I've learned a lot, and again, so proud to hear about like your academics within CHS. I mean, it really has obviously made a huge difference. So thank you so much for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. And to everybody, thank you for joining me here at Where Are They Now? And I'll see you again back with another CHS alum.